Hello, my name is Minju Kim.
I'm Snigdha Nakala.
And I'm Brenda Machuca.
And today we are presenting the coffee case. Here's background. So the coffee company is a global distributor of organic coffee beans and teas located in the United States, Canada, and South America. In order to maximize its focus on the production of coffee beans, coffee company entered into an agreement with Nature's Beverage, who is interested in expanding internationally. Once the agreement had taken place, coffee company provide a sub-license to Nature's Beverage to distribute the right of Arbor Tea, which is coffee company's South American local tea brand. Nature's Beverage incurred cost total $50,000 to acquire the sub-license. Apart from such cost, Nature's Beverage transferred $3 million for the sub-license of the distribution right of Arbor Tea. Next, Snigdha is going to talk about issue number 1.
Thank you, Minju. Issue number 1. The issue that we were provided with is whether the acquisition of the sublicense by Nature's Beverage to distribute herbal tea meets the definition of a business. Now let's take a look at the definition of a business. As per 805-10-55-3A, a business is an integrated set of activities and assets that is capable of being conducted and managed for the purpose of providing a return in the form of dividends, lower costs, or other economic benefits directly to investors or other owners, members, or participants. Apart from the definition, there are 3 main indicators of a business, which include input, process, and output. Input and process being the most important ones. Input, any economic resource that creates or has the ability to contribute to the creation of outputs when one or more processes are applied to it. Process, any system, standard, protocol, convention, or rule that when applied to an input or inputs creates or has the ability to contribute to the creation of outputs. And lastly, output. The result of inputs and processes applied to those inputs that provide goods or services to customers, investment income, such as dividends or interest or other revenues. Using the guidance from case F, Nature's Beverage must take into consideration the guidance from paragraphs 805 to 805-10-55-5A to 55-5C, which states what set of integrated activities and assets meet the definition of a business. 805-10-55-5A states that Nature's Beverage has determined that not one of the assets acquired make up the most of the fair value of the assets acquired. 805-10-55-5B states that there are 3 identifiable assets. One being the sublicense to distribute herbal tea, the second being the customer contracts in Latin America, and the last being the supply agreement between herbal tea and Nature's Beverage. 805-10-55-5C states that a group of similar assets includes multiple assets identified in accordance with paragraphs 805-10-55-5B, which was mentioned above. When evaluating whether assets are similar, an entity should consider the nature of each single identifiable asset and the risk associated with managing and creating outputs from the assets. Apart from the guidance mentioned above, 805-10-55-5E states the business combination is not considered a business because the acquired contracts do not provide a service that applies to a substantive process which applies to another acquired input. If herbal tea has supplied a workforce to perform the distribution of the drinks to Nature's Beverage, then it would have been considered a business. Following that, 5E-B mentions that an acquired contract that provides access to an organized workforce that has the necessary skills, knowledge, or experience to perform an acquired process, that when applied to an acquired input or inputs is critical to the ability to continue producing outputs. Based on the guidance provided here, there are 2 main reasons why this is not considered a business. The first being acquired contracts do not provide a service that applies to a substantive process that applies to another acquired input, and the second being herbal tea retaining its possession of its workforce. Now Brenda will talk about issue 2.
Thank you, Snigdha. So this brings us to issue number 2. how should Nature's Beverage account for the acquisition, including the treatment of transaction costs? Based on our conclusion for issue number 1, which was that the assets acquired do not constitute a business, we needed to look for guidance that involved accounting for assets that were acquired that do not meet the definition of a business. So this brought us to 805-50-05-03, which is a subsection about the acquisition of assets rather than a business. So this subsection addresses a transaction in which the assets acquired and liabilities assumed do not constitute a business and requires such a transaction to be accounted for just as a normal asset acquisition. So this brings us to the next slide, which is about how to recognize this. Asset acquisitions in which the consideration given is cash are measured by the amount of cash paid, which generally includes the transaction cost of the asset acquisition. So this just means that when the amount they paid for the asset is the amount that is going to be placed on the balance sheet, but this also needs to include the transaction costs, which includes the legal and accounting fees. So this brings us to the journal entry that we're going to make. So the sublicense is debited for $3,050,000, and this is an asset. And then there's a credit to cash for $3,050,000, which is just the amount paid plus the transaction costs. So this amount includes the legal fees and the accounting fees and anything else used to acquire the asset. And this will most likely be amortized over the course or over the life of the asset. Thank you, and now Minju will do our conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. So based on our research, we concluded that the sublicense is not a business because the acquired contract do not comprise an input and a substantial process. Urban Tea retained control of the workforce, and the contract acts more as a way of acquiring inputs. The business arrangement fails to meet the definition of a business because it did not acquire a process as a result of the transaction. Therefore, the 3 elements of a business as described in 805-10-55-4A was not met. Considering that the sublicense is not a business, Nature's Beverage should account the sublicense as an asset in the journal entry as Brenda mentioned earlier. Thank you.